Now we've been working our way through John's Gospel, and John has been building up his case through the Gospel, but also there's a specific target. He has the first 12 chapters as the public ministry of Jesus before he begins the trek to the cross. And so this really climaxes. Remember, John's trying to give signs and evidence so that you may believe, and it climaxes right here in chapter 11 with the sign of Jesus' public ministry, and that is Jesus can raise the dead. And that's what's happening here. Let's get into it from verse 1. We'll read again. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. Now, do you notice that this is not just a random healing, raising? We just read that this is the one Jesus loves. This is a friend. Jesus is the Lord God who comes to earth. But in his humanity, he has a love for the world, yes, but he has a personal love, and specifically, like all of us, family and friends, he has a particular love for. And Lazarus and his family are one of those. So verse 4, when he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. The centre of our text today is what we just read there in verse 4, that God's glory may be revealed. The Son will be glorified through this action, and it will leave people without excuse as John builds his case, trying to show Jesus' glory so that you can believe. That's John's plan in this gospel. But also, in that glory that's going to be displayed, he shows this personal love of Jesus that I just mentioned. So verse 5, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. This is the family he loves. But what's fascinating here is that we have a little later on in this chapter, in verse 21, Martha says, Lord, if you'd been here, you could have prevented this guy, our brother, getting sick and dying. The others say the same later on in verse 37. In fact, Jesus himself knows that he could have prevented Lazarus dying. So what's fascinating is the next verse, verse 6. So when he, that's Jesus, heard Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. So how do you put these two things together? Verse 5, Jesus loved Lazarus, he's dying. Verse 6, so he stayed where he was. How does that work? Jesus loved Lazarus, so he delayed going. Jesus loved the whole family. That's why he let Lazarus die. He loved him. He loved them. Jesus let them go through grief and pain because he loved them. That's what it seems to be saying here. How can this be? Why does Jesus allow you to go through a trial that is delayed? Because he loves you. Really? Why does Jesus let you go through loneliness or pain or delay of trial? Because he loves you. How is that love? How is that love? We're going to have to dig into this today to really get behind what this is. And we're going to have to go back to the beginning, and that's why we read from Genesis chapter 3, where all this began. Adam and Eve were in this place that was beautiful one day and paradise the next. In fact, it was paradise all the time. Bliss, birds are singing, sun is shining, no floods, no problems, it's all good. Everything's good. In fact, every day they even get to go for a little stroll with God. This place is the best. What went wrong? Well, of course we know what went wrong. There was this one tree that they were not to eat from that tree. And they went their own way. They ate from that tree. And they fell for the lie of the devil that they needed to take hold of what was right before their eyes, that was pleasing to their eyes right now. They no longer trusted in God, who they could not see at that time. So, no faith. Instead, they believed now is the time to take hold of what looks good to us. And so, what happened is, from that moment, every human being has this issue, this problem, that we no longer believe in the God we can't see until and unless the Spirit of God awakens us. So think about this. The way out of paradise, the way out of the garden was no faith. The only way back in is faith. That's the only way. Faith took us out. Faith, once God gives us that faith, we are saved, we are restored, though we don't see paradise yet, but we will. But we get a glimpse of it in a new relationship with God, a restored relationship, back to where it was supposed to be. So we've got faith, okay? So once you've got faith, you're saved, and once you're saved, you've got faith, you never have to worry again, you never have anxiety, you never have any troubles, right? Yeah. Is that how it works? No, in actual fact, we only need a mustard seed of faith to be saved, but it's a growing mustard seed that needs to continue to grow. Though we might be saved, we've still got a long way to go. And the story of Jesus delaying the ones he loves here is all about showing them his glory and growing in their faith so that they may believe. The delay has love in it. That's what we're going to be looking at. In fact, Christianity is all about faith in Christ, not only coming to Christ and having our relationship restored, even with a mustard seed of faith, but growing in that and going on in that. And God is on about that, in restoring us until we get to the point of being in paradise and we're living by sight again. He's going to grow us all through this life in that faith. How does he do it? Well, one of the ways is right here in our text today, delaying what we think we need right now. So God is not playing games, delaying us like as though it's you just got to hang in there until you measure up and wait, and then I'll let you off the hook here. He's actually doing something in it. I love that passage in Romans where the Apostle Paul talks about, suffering produces, that one, suffering produces, perseverance produces, blah, blah, blah. But what I keep coming down to is produces. It's actually doing something in it. You don't have to wait till you get through it. He's doing something now, right now in your life. And it's like when our children, I remember when bringing up when our boys were little, have the discipline because I love you, right? I'm sorry I have to do this, but I'm doing it because I love you. And they go, well, don't love me then. You know? What do you have to love me for then? They don't get it. Kids don't get it. You can try and explain it to them and they don't get it, right? Kids don't get it. That's us when it comes to faith. We don't get it. We still need to grow up and realise that God is actually at work in the delay, in the time of trial, in the difficulties. You know, I could preach 1,000 sermons on this, and you still forget it. You'll get some difficulty in your life, you'll still forget this. That actually God's in it. And you know something? If I go this week and my computer crashes, I will forget it too. Okay? That's our difficulty. We forget. This living God is in every part of our lives, including the trial, including the delay. And He's doing it, like Jesus says here, because He loves you. Because He loves you. He's got something big in mind. But see how the disciples keep looking by sight in verse 8. But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you are trying to go back. In other words, give it a miss. In fact, Jesus says, you know, Lazarus is sleeping, right? In verse 12, his disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, it'll get better. Look, he's sleeping. Don't worry about it. Now, sleep often, it can mean sleep like going to sleep, or it can mean death in the scriptures. It can mean either of those, of course. And so you can understand the misunderstanding the disciples had here. But could it be that the disciples are also looking for a way to get out, having to go back on that dangerous journey where, Jesus, you might get stoned to death there, and us too. So if he's sleeping, let him sleep. He'll be right. Okay? There's an element of that. They genuinely are misunderstanding it, but at the same time, there's a little bit of an agenda too. They don't want to go back into danger. But Jesus here is leading him and taking hold of God's will by faith. Don't have fear. Go do what God's will is. Go forwards. Verse 9, Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light. So Jesus is saying, now's the time to take hold of what God has prepared for us. If you're doing God's will, even if by sight this doesn't look good, you'll still will not stumble. You'll still end up glorifying God, and it'll be good for you. But hang on, this looks better if I go this way. God's saying this way, and I think this will be better for me, and I need this, I need to get out of this, or whatever it is. No, just walk by the light. Walk by Jesus. Do God's will. And that comes back to things even like obedience. You know, the tree's looking pretty pleasing there. That could be good. Or go God's way by faith. By faith. And you will not stumble. You will not stumble. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The Lord is with you, even through that valley. So, it's not saying we need to be reckless or foolish, but if you know God's will, and even if it looks hard, take hold of it, walk forwards by faith. But the truth is, often we're afraid. You know, if I try to tell this person the gospel, they might make fun of me. Or I've been rejected before, and I know what it feels like to be ridiculed, and I'm afraid. Even if I hand them on an invitation to our Christianity Explored coming up, and they say, "Oh, you're Bible bashing me again," even though you're not doing anything more than handing it, you're afraid. Anyone afraid? Afraid of anyone? Afraid to admit you're afraid? Because there's also another kind of fear the fear of missing out. Where does that come from? Back to that Garden of Eden again that we read before, when right before them is this looks pleasing to the eye, and if you don't take it, you're going to miss out on all that wisdom you could have as good as God. Up there with God, with wisdom. And if you don't do it, you'll miss out. Grab it now. Grab it now. Never mind what God said. Grab it now. But if I go God's way, I might miss out. That's another kind of fear. You see, sight, Adam and Eve could see what looked good, pleasing to the eye right before them. But of course it was a disaster. They didn't live by faith in the God who had already told them. You ever heard that saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know? What a stupid saying that is. Who wants to be with any devil? I don't want the devil I know. I want to get away from the devil I know. That's crazy. Right? Step out and walk in the light with God. Don't doubt that the Lord, His way, walking in His light, even if I've got to miss out, even if I've got to get ridiculed, even if I've got to get embarrassed, walk in the light. And don't doubt that right now in your life, whatever you're going through right now, that His love is in it for you. In this, not just to get to the other side. In this. Don't doubt that. Don't doubt that. I don't know whether there's any doubters here, but who's the most famous doubter of all time in all of history? Excellent answer. Who's the second most famous doubter? I don't know whether you're most famous, Pete, just maybe in your own home, but we all know who the famous doubter is, don't we? Doubting Thomas. Doubting Thomas. He doubted. And we sort of go, yeah, that's that doubting Thomas. We don't like that doubting Thomas. Hey, if we had half the courage that Thomas had, all this time we've been underestimating this Thomas guy, a doubter, yeah. But take a look at Thomas when he knows what it is to follow Jesus. He's going to follow Him no matter what. Have a look at verse 16 with me. Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with Him." Hey, he might have been a doubter at one point, but the other disciples actually want to get out of going. If he's sleeping, let him sleep. We don't want to go back there where you get stoned to death. Thomas says, hey, if we die, we die. Oh, of course there's a threatening danger here. He's the only one who says this. Nothing's going to stop this guy. This guy, Thomas. Now, yes, later he becomes that famous doubter. That's actually powerfully speaking to us this morning. That mixed in with the most courageous guy, there's also someone who doubts. There's also someone who goes through this. Mixed in with faith is also this unbelief that we need working on, God's working on in us. And Thomas is this great example, because Thomas is a great example of one of the most courageous people. Thomas, of course, if you don't know, after Jesus ascended, wasn't a doubter. Thomas went on to be a missionary in Parthia and Persia, which is modern day India and Iran. And he not only served and was a missionary, but gave his life for faith and was executed by a spear thrust because he was a man of faith. The doubter you all know as the doubter, No, he was faith. So it's a mix going on that God's working on through all of our lives. Even a most powerful, courageous believer like Thomas had his moments. The Lord knows that, and he's working on it in us. So, coming back to the centre of our text, really verse 4, when he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." So this is going on for the glory of God, but why the delay? Why so long? Well, that's what we've been looking at. And one thing you can tell for sure, if you can walk in the light. If you walk with the devil, you know, he won't delay you. See, God is taking you through delays. God is working on your faith that is more precious than gold, says the Apostle Peter. But the devil, you know, he won't delay you. It's all now. You can have it now. Look at that fruit right there on the tree. You can take it now. No delay, no waiting. But I don't want to go with the devil, I know. I don't want to know any devil. The disciples really don't want to think too much about it, so Jesus spells it out to them. Look at verse 12 with me. His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep, so then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead." What a powerful cut end to the conversation that was. Because this is not just, someone out there that we don't know. This is someone that Jesus loved. This is someone that was a friend, a close friend that Jesus loved. And the disciples, they knew him as well. This was a friend of ours. And suddenly there's a big thunk, stop to the conversation. Have you ever been in a situation where you've had to say those words about someone you love and you find it hard to, I remember when I was young, my mum died when I was 14, and so all through my teenage years, whenever I'd get introduced and people would say stuff like, "What did your dad do?" "Oh, what about your mum?" And I couldn't get the words out. My mother is dead. I couldn't say those words. So I say, "Oh, she passed away," or something like that. But as soon as you say that, "My mum's dead," like 6-foot concrete blocks go boom into the conversation. Where's it going to go after that? Thump. That's what's happened here. Lazarus is dead. What? They can't say anything. That's the end of the conversation. Lazarus is dead. Verse 3 told us before that the one you love is sick. And verse 5 told us Jesus loved the whole family, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And this is the one where Jesus says, Lazarus is dead. And you know the shortest verse in the Bible, right? It's in this chapter. John chapter 11, verse 35. Jesus wept. This is someone he was close to. This is someone he loved. So how mind-blowing is this? Then what Jesus says next. Lazarus is dead. Then in verse 15, he says, and for your sake, I'm glad that I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him. Now, how do you get that one? He's dead. And for your sake, I'm glad that I wasn't there to spare him. For your sakes. What's the point of that? How is it for your sake? For your faith. What did he say? So that you may believe. He's at work in this delay. He's glad that he delayed. He's glad that he let all this happen. He's glad. Why? Because there's something more precious to Jesus than even the pain you've got to go through in a delay. Even the grief you might have to go through. There's something more precious in Jesus' sight. There's something more precious even than the pain Jesus has got to go through. There's something more precious. What is it? Your faith is more precious in Jesus' sight. He's glad. He's glad that this horrible thing has happened. He's glad he wasn't there to stop Lazarus dying, so that you may believe. Have you ever cried out to Jesus, prayed for something? You're going through pain, you're going through trial, you cry out to him. That's what Mary and Martha did. Earlier in verse 3, so the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. What are they doing? They sent a plea, they sent a prayer. They're praying. Lord, you've got to do something. But he didn't come. He delayed. Have you ever prayed to the Lord and he delays you? He delays you. Are you really on my side, Lord? You're delaying me. Do you really care? Well, he doesn't just love you in it. He feels it with you. And he's going to continue that delay for the glory of God because of his love for you, so that you may believe. And you go, I already believe. Why any more delay? The disciples already believed. What is he saying? So that you may believe. They already believed. You already believe? And you go, well, Lord, that's enough. That's enough delay. I already believe. No. Jesus is at work. He's not going to leave you just there, just believing. Just believing. A mustard seed of faith that'll get you into heaven. But he wants more. He wants to give you more. He wants to give you more. It's like those old American wartime posters, Uncle Sam, I want you. Remember that? Well, that's what Jesus wants. He wants you. He doesn't want to just get you into heaven. He wants you, the whole you. He wants more. He wants to transform you more in this relationship. Now, we haven't mentioned that much, but what is faith? It's actually about a relationship. It's trust. The most loving relationships are about trust and love. And that's what Jesus is doing here with their faith. You ever noticed how unbelievers will say to you, I believe in God, I've always believed. And you know they don't believe. But they say that. You believe? Yeah, I believe. You go to church? No, don't need to. I just believe. You know that they don't believe. They're not honouring the church that Jesus died for or walking with him in light. But I just believe. True belief will never leave you just believing. Just believing will get you into heaven. It'll get you in a relationship with God, but God's going to grow that relationship for his glory and for your faith. So all this time when you've been saying, Lord, hurry up, will you? How long, oh Lord? Hurry up. Jesus up there going, how about you hurry up? I'm doing something here. Hurry up with it. Can't you see? Believe that I'm doing something. There's even more love behind this than what we can really see at this moment. Though we know, John's readers are reading on after the fact, so they know that there's something even bigger, there's even more love behind this than just producing through these trials. Have you ever noticed the camaraderie there is between war veterans? Well, I've always been fascinated by that there's a closeness, there's a connection that you can't enter if you've never been in war yourself. Doesn't matter, you might be interested in war, you might know people who've been through it, you might study it and all these sorts of things. But unless you've been there, you can never enter that bond, that understanding that veterans, though one might be a struggler or a no-hoper or, not worldly successful, other one might be, and that yet there's a connection, there's a bond that only they can have, that we can't enter into because we've never been there. Well, let me tell you about a veteran who has been there, a veteran who went to the war of the universe, the war against death and hell and sin, the war that was fought and won at the cross of Christ as he took the eternal wrath of God in his body upon the cross for all those who will believe. He was hanging up there until every last sin you've ever committed, every thought, every word, every deed is paid for, and he could say, it is finished. He went through that for you, if you will believe in him. So when you go through your trials and delays now, oh Lord, where are you? Don't you know what I'm going through? He has been there. Oh, he's been there and a whole lot more than you could ever imagine. He feels it with you. Don't think he doesn't know and doesn't feel the pain with you that you're going through. He does. But his love for you is greater, that he will allow it to take its course so that you may believe, so that you can grow in this faith, so that you can walk stronger in the light.